one of the things that's kind of integrated into the compassionate systems framework that I think often escapes people's mind if they haven't been exposed to the work has to do with this notion of polarization, or, we're the good guys and they're the bad guys, or they over there are the dark people and we're the bright people, or, all the ways in which we have narratives about that. And in order to, the reason why we call this compassionate systems is because the capacity to hold the system is really tough. Because in the system as a whole, if you really want to hold the system as a whole, whatever system you're working with, there will inevitably be things that you wish weren't there. And you just have to think about the political state of the world, or what's going on in the world right now, or who holds the greatest deal of power, or whatever. And then for most of us, we see that there are things that we would rather shy away from. The only capacity we have to hold paradox, I learned from my spiritual teacher years ago, is to hold it at our hearts. And that's why we're cultivating compassion. Compassion is not a kind of a wishy-washy stance, or everybody is good and everything is nice and say yes all the time at all. Compassion is almost like a rational intention or capacity for us to want to operate with care and to want to operate with kindness, to want to wish well-beings also for the people we don't like, also for the situations we detest or have really adverse reactions to. So if we want to hold the system as a whole, we have to cultivate this stance, this inner capacity for being a systems thinker and sensor, which is compassion. So polarization in many ways is the opposite of compassion. It's the place where we say what I do is the right thing and what you do is the wrong thing. And then we talk about, we've always had, different enemies, of course, no matter where you are. Right now it's, probably Russians are enemies, some places China is enemies, the US is seen as enemies, all kinds of various ways in which we talk about that. All of those of us who read 1984 when we were young, of course, will know that then that shifts, and then all of a sudden there's a new enemy, but as long as it's a common enemy, we can have an us versus them kind of polarized orientation, and that's innately human. It's an evolutionary strategy because we humans are a tribal species, so we will have a tendency to in-grouping. In-grouping is a survival strategy for tribes. It's more important that my in-group survives, because then I survive, than the other people over there survives. So compassion can transcend that, but only through cultivation and intentional practice. And it doesn't mean that now we think everybody is the same or everybody is great, but it means that even when you're doing something, even if I don't like you, I can still care about you. Even when you're operating in ways that I think and feel deeply are against my values and against humanity and so on, I can still wish for you that you have well-being and care in your life. And so that stance in and of itself is probably the most radical disposition we can have in our world today, of wanting and insisting on that we can cultivate care during all the various circumstances, even when I'm in the middle of, warfare, or even when I'm in the middle of seeing what's unfolding in the world right now, that my grounding in all of it, my commitment and my intention is that I want to operate from a stance of caring and wishing well-being for others, even when I don't like it. That's the antidote to the polarization we're seeing today, and that can be practiced. And the good news is it makes us feel a lot better when we practice this way, and that helps other people around us to feel better as well. So there is a really virtuous cycle once we get into this mode of operating. And that, I think we can ignite change strategies from that perspective alone.